Grow, Sell, and Retire is the podcast for the lazy overachiever. BD Dalton, author of The Assisted Purchase, True Gravity, and Grow, Sell, and Retire, is here to give his 25 years of secrets, tips, and assistance to take your business to the next level. This podcast is for anyone who wants to sell more, work less, and make better business. Now, here's your host, BD, with today's GSR podcast.
Hey everybody, BD Dalton here, Growth, Sell, and Retire podcast. We're talking about being lazy overachievers so you don't have to think any harder and you don't have to work any harder, but hopefully we can get some secrets to make things happen. Today I've got Piers Linney in. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about a little bit of Dragon's Den, which I know you probably overplayed, but it's a great thing. So Piers, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. So tell me a little bit of because some people, this is international, I have a lot of US listeners and things like that. So give us a little bit of your potted history. You know, you go to your Wikipedia page, which I don't have one, but you do. So tell us a little bit about Piers Linney.
Yeah, it's always our day, I think, as well. Things move quickly. So I'm best known for being a dragon on TV, which if you're in different countries, could be Shark Tank. Often when I go to place, people say, I know you. I say, yeah, I was on Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. People often say to me, did you get the money? Even my daughters at school, when I knew school, somebody said that. But my background is pretty diverse. So I started life living in the north of the UK, near Manchester, if you know it. I went to a pretty, not particularly great school. And to cut a very long story short, I ended up becoming a lawyer in the city, Wall Street, if you're in the US, and a banker at Credit Suisse when it was solvent. And I was an M&A banker, a leveraged buyout specialist. Then I came out of there, went into the business essentially, first wave .coms, and then finance, alternative finance. And then I've been involved in businesses, either setting them up, starting them, investing in them, buying them, consolidating them in technology, media, and telecoms. More recent years, I was a co-founder and I'm a chairman of a business called Atherton Bike. So that's additive manufacturing. So 3D printed bikes and carbon tubing, basically. And we won the Women's Elite World Cup race on the weekend, which is amazing.
Congratulations.
And then I'm also involved in space, a company I'm involved in, started by a friend of mine. We're putting a constellation of satellites into space so we can provide 8K video of all of Earth. So that's quite interesting when you think about the ramifications of that in terms of changing the view of our planet. I advise Sky and Diversity and Inclusion. Comcast in the US, their subsidiary, a very large global auto manufacturer on future strategy, and a few scale-ups. And I've just started a new business called Implement AI, because I think that's one of the biggest opportunities there will be in our lifetime, both as an entrepreneur, but also as a business owner.
That's crazy. And the AI is big in the news right now. And if people listen to this in 2 years, it'll probably be, yeah, we're already doing that all day long. But right now it's coming on strong. So when you're looking at that, how did you get involved in the Dragon's Den stuff? And because they don't just pick any random person that's a decent business person. You had to have something that gave you the credentials to say, hey, besides a stack of cash, what makes you a good evaluator and beyond the Dragon's Den itself?
Well, that's TV. So TV producers don't often understand business. So whether they know I'm a good at analysis, I don't know. I mean, some people probably try and get on these programs. I was approached, but again, it's a long story. But I was went from a pretty rubbish school, to be quite frank, and ended up a lawyer in the city and then a banker. I made some money. I had a business then doing about £45 million a year, probably 4 million EBITDA in terms of profits, various investments. So I was kind of a bit of a rarity, really, a bit of a rare breed. So people approached me. I ended up on a list of the most influential Black Britons, top 100. And through that, some researchers spotted me. And I did a program. I don't know if you ever saw this. And if you were in the UK, you probably were, weren't you?
202. I was here in 02.
The Secret Millionaire, which is 11. And that was a program a bit like Undercover Boss, if you've seen that, where you pretend, I went into a community, pretended I was some IT worker, trying to be inspired. And then at the end of it, you sort of come out and I gave away quite a lot of money. But my program was in a prison, young offenders. And I still mentor the chap today, probably, 10, 12 years later. And now he earns more money than me. And he was in prison for What a long time. That's an amazing story. And then through that, the researchers obviously had a profile and they asked to do Dragon's Den. And the first year, I was kind of like, I don't want to do it. I was reluctant celebrity. I didn't want to, I'm busy. It didn't happen. And the second year, I was away with Sir Richard Branson on his private game reserve in the Ulusaba National Park, the Kruger National Park in South Africa. And I was thinking, and I basically donated to a charity. So I was there with him and his family. And I was thinking, who do I talk to about, business and, TV and the media? And you know where this is going. So we had a conversation. He was fantastic. And he basically got me to ring the producers back and say, I'm in. And that's where I ended up on Dragon's Den. So, but then often I do quite a few keynotes. And I always make the point that when I was at school, and you think about that, you kind of ended up being a lawyer, a banker, you made a bit of money. I've lost money as well, but you may have made some money. And then you suddenly sitting with Sir Richard Branson, the only entrepreneur I've ever followed or whose book I've ever read at that time, sitting on him having a Corona, discussing whether he should be a dragon on Dragon's Den. I mean, that's
surreal in Africa on a game reserve. And wow.
Even today, I find that surreal. And sometimes I look back at it and people come up to me in the street all excited, and I still find it a bit weird.
And people come at you all the time now with Atherton, with all these other things, and you have to decide where to put your time or where to put your money. How about 3 really good things that you like to see or that maybe drew you to some of the investments you've done, and maybe 3 things that instantly tell you, turns your stomachs or turns you away or makes you run? So 3 good and 3 challenges.
If I could pick the winners every time because of 3 factors, and then the other 3 that don't, then I'd be doing a lot better. But I think that as I got older, and a lot of this you learn through pain and experience, really, is that the business I'm involved in now, if you kind of go through them, are things that genuinely interest me. So when I was younger, I used to do things and get involved in things to make money, essentially. And I'm kind of over that. So it's things that interest me. So space fascinates me. I'm a mountain bike enthusiast. That's why the Athertons actually approached me to help them start a business. So,
yes.
Bikes is part of my life as well. And almost, technology generally. I know that's quite broad, but, the new thing. So I was fascinated with cloud. I had a cloud business. It was more personally than in business. I never really got involved in the blockchain related businesses. That fascinates me as well. Yeah. And now artificial intelligence certainly always has. I was doing talks about this probably 2-3 years ago. I was a trustee of the UK's largest innovation foundation with a £600 million endowment. And we did a lot of research on AI and its impact on the economy. So I was talking about this a long time ago, and now it's kind of come of age. So really, people I want to work with, that is the most fundamental ingredient of any new business, especially early stage businesses. And as they get bigger, you can change people and management more easily. But people, essentially, and something, this is personally, I mean, it's not always correct to go and, follow your dreams and, build a business around your passion. That's not always the best advice. But things that you generally are interested in, because at the end of the day, especially in young businesses, you're going to have to spend 18 hours a day sometimes, 6 days a week, maybe even 7, worrying about this stuff and putting out fires. And I think the other one then again is, and I've learned this the hard way and I made mistakes myself, is people that can sell. And you can go through, I do a talk, and maybe that's the downside, about the 5 factors of growing a business. So it's having a plan, operations, people, finance, increasingly technology, and that kind of pervades all of those. But it's people that understand that having a business at the end of the day involves selling stuff. And that can be on a web page, on a funnel. It doesn't matter. It might be, B2B sales, face-to-face. You've got to send people around there in a car. But you have to be able to sell. And a lot of people forget that. And I've been involved in businesses where I've forgotten that sometimes because you get so excited with the technology. And I've invested in businesses where when it came down to it, they couldn't sell. They had no interest in it, no expertise. And they would struggle to hire the expertise, and they mostly failed because of that reason. Just shipping stuff and getting it out the door and then getting paid. I think on the downside again, I probably would go through my 5 factors keynote.
Yeah.
And one of the big ones again, it's a flip. You can always say it's a flip side. Well, people is one, but I talk about more team. Is that when you're building a business, often, especially a new business, people say to me all the time, I need to find a co-founder. I need to find a team. My next door neighbor's dog walker's friend's ex-husband knows something about marketing, is coming looking for a job, and they're working for me, and I can't afford to pay them. So I've given them 5% of the business or 10% of the business. So often when you're growing a business, it can be very difficult, but the people you start with and the different phases in development of that business are not the right people for the next phase. And a lot of people struggle with, even if they know it in their heart of hearts, they struggle with taking that in and having those conversations and making those changes. And the reality is, the people in your business, the business is outgrown, they know that. They want to have that conversation. They start to feel uncomfortable. And often they leave before you have to ask them to, but have the conversation and manage people. And that's a skill as well. And the other one really is getting your ducks in a row before you scale. So I liken this to the pantomime horse, where if your front end takes off, marketing, sales is amazing. Sales and revenue can solve a lot of issues, let's face it. Yes. But in a lot of businesses, if that front end takes off and you haven't quite got the back end set up to deal with it, then at some point it's going to break into two, that pantomime horse, and it's very hard to put it together in the middle of Act 2. So structuring your business and thinking about scaling it and growing it is actually really quite important. And often you have to do that quickly behind the curve. But those that just don't and are totally focused on the front end, again, I was saying that people don't need to sell, but you need to be able to back it up, because otherwise your customer experience is going to go down the toilet very quickly. Another one is, and there's lots of these, I'm just picking out 3 that spring to mind, is financing. So don't try and push round pegs through square holes. If you are new to finance, even if you're not sometimes, you're just optimistic. And a great example is, I had a lunch with a chap the other day, and we're talking about raising finance to business. And I talk about, debt and convertibles, and it's a new business. I'm like, well, you probably want equity for all these reasons. It doesn't really stack up. Other people say, well, I want to raise a loan finance. I'm like, well, have you got any cash flow? Are you profitable? No. Any assets? You can offer security? No. You're willing to give a personal guarantee? Absolutely not. And like, well, you're not going to raise any debt, are you? And then you've got all these kind of intermediary, like fintechs now. They're offering, revenue-based finance. I'm going to be working with one quite soon that does, it's sort of like reverse factoring. So fascinating new forms of finance. So understand the finance you need, understand what they are looking for, not what you're looking for, and understand, are you a round peg that's going to fit through their round hole? And if you are, then you have far less friction in terms of raising that finance. You can go grey and lose your hair and have a lot of stress trying to close down finance that's just not appropriate for your business.
So in being you can keep going on, but so you've had a lot of different ventures and different things that how do you kind of with your gut or with your pocketbook or whatever it is, figure out something's a sunk cost, figure out something that I just need to walk away from this. What's been the hardest one or the easiest one to walk away from you?
I have that thought. I think this morning actually. Businesses where you set them up, and it's so hard when you've got friends or people you've invested. You put a huge amount of time in, years in some cases, and you realise that in its current form, there's always the pivot, but in its current form, it's not going to work. And when you start out, I can make this work. You're determined, and you'll chase that rabbit down that hole for as far as you need to try and find it. Whereas oftentimes you need to fill the hole in and move on. And that can be really quite painful. You feel as though I've been there many times, man. Feel as though you let people down. I've done this where I didn't want to get out of bed for a month. Where you think they let people down. But often the investors, they're aware of the risks. As long as you've done your best and you can sleep at night, then, what more can you ask? Often, many people realize later on in life that their first business, the one they hung all their hopes and dreams on, it often is the one that's going to make you. It's the ones where, you're going to learn, you're going to make mistakes. And the idea really is that on the way, where the mistakes do happen or things don't work out, is that you try and do the best you can for those stakeholders. But there does come a point, and the point you made is a really important one actually, about your guts. So often, whether it's people working for you, your business, your financing process, you start to know in your gut that this is not going quite in the direction you expected it to or wanted it to. And the thing about your guts is that if you've got lots of experience, your gut reaction is your subconscious. It's taking all the information in, it's assimilating it, it's applying all that experience and coming up with probably quite a sensible result. And if you're not listening to it in your consciousness, it's going to tell you in your subconscious, and that's your gut feeling. And often when you say go with your gut, if you've got experience, it's probably a good thing. When I've gone with my gut, often it's worked out pretty well. If you have no experience whatsoever of that particular situation and your gut, you feel a rumble in your gut, it's just stomach ache. don't mix the two up. And it's a powerful force, that actually. But and often don't just go for these things alone. Seek counsel, seek support, talk to people, talk to stakeholders you think you're going to let down. Hear what they got to say and tell them your side of it, and just deal with it and be open about it and let it sort of get it all out there. And you'll find it a lot easier.
That's awesome. I think my mentor essentially said, okay, shut it down today, look at it and say, okay, it's going to cost you another 100, 150, 500,000, whatever of your time and effort. Would you invest it in again right now? In its current state, would you invest another 100, 500, whatever it is? And if you can't say yes wholeheartedly, then your gut, listen to your gut and follow it. It's not always right, but it gives you another.
Yeah, it's not a bad way of looking at it, actually. Is where you are, would you go again, given where it is today? And of course, the other thing is, which I try and do, is to pivot. So, can you structure this so that people can maybe take, the tax losses and then you can move on with a business in a slightly different form. There might be assets, whether they're digital or not, or team or cash left or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
You do something with these assets and come up with something. That's how Slack came about. There's lots of business out there like that came out of pivots.
And you're pivoting right now too, sir, with a couple of different things. So let's walk through the AI business, because when you walk through back your 5 pillars, 2 of them probably at least can be really helped by AI assistance and making things more efficient overall. So walk me through how you got intuitive AI, how you got all the stuff that you're doing right now, and then kind of the next steps for you, or how we can understand about AI a little bit better. So open up AI conversation.
Yeah, so I did a podcast for a bank in the UK, quite a big one, that West, a couple of years ago. And one of the chaps on there was an entrepreneur, and we got talking, and we kind of stayed in touch. And then I've been looking at sort of AI and thinking, I honestly do think, it's hard to know exactly what the time is going to be. It's going to be longer for robotics than software. But I think this is bigger than the internet. I think it's far more powerful in terms of its impact on business, the economy, and society at large, and potentially all of our lives. And there's a lot of noise now. There's a bit of a hype factor. There might be a slight trough of disillusionment afterwards, but I don't think it's like the cloud that people are still talking about transitioning to it, or the internet. People still haven't got a website, or blockchain, where people couldn't quite work out use cases. I think this is going to change the world. And we were talking about this, and he started a business doing training. And we're saying, well, no one's really doing this. No one's talking about it. And we're having these calls every weekend saying, well, there's no one really helping a small business understand it. They're just telling people on YouTube, funny how to make, text to video. It's not really helpful, is it? And someone should, and then we kind of had that awkward silence on the call and sort of thought, why don't we start a business doing this? And I've got quite a background in technology. He's got a background in kind of the old sort of clunky AI, machine learning and computer vision. But the large language models and the launch of ChatGPT, the rest is history, has really changed the way in which our understanding the power of this technology and the way in which we can interact with it. And that's the key to it, really. And this wave of AI, we've seen this sort of generative AI. What it's fantastic at is creating ideas, content, simulating knowledge, and it's got lots of different use cases. And you see now, and it was interesting, ChatGPT and Microsoft, and I was at a Microsoft event last week, actually, quite a senior one, talking about this. And you see the amount of money and resource that's been thrown at this now means that a lot of these companies realize that there's an existential risk the way in which they do business. And what was interesting, I found from the big players, is talking to the big sort of vendors, is that it's the large companies that are jumping on this very, very quickly. because they understand the power of it. Like law firms, for example, huge. They just see that this is an absolute game changer. So I think that you are going to see, and I think that it's interesting that AI means that small businesses and entrepreneurs can be empowered. The thing the other day, the guy that wrote the Exponential Organizations book was saying that you're going to see the first, 3-person unicorn, I assume, because everything else is done by agents, artificial intelligence agents. So you're going to see this small companies empowered, but you're also going to see large companies can also now go after the longer tail because they can personalize things, they can do things that they couldn't do before. There was the remit of small businesses. So I think you're going to see this battle in the middle for an enormous part of the market. The big companies are never going to do the local fish and chip shop, well, cloud kitchens maybe, and vice versa. It's not going to happen, but it's going to be a real battle in the middle. And the big thing is this, is that, and what Implement AI really is about, we're a consultancy essentially, and we are taking our clients, and some are 2 people, some are 500, on a journey. So we're saying, look, you're not going to implement all these solutions now and off you go. You're going to have to try them, test them, look at different use cases, different departments of your business. Where can you save money? Where can you optimize your costs? Where can you grow? Where can you grow without adding costs? That's a big one, I think. And we're helping them sort of look at the horizon. How will it impact your business, your sector, you, what your competition doing? Because that's a big one. The old adage, AI won't take your job or kill your business. It's someone using AI that will. So we're helping them go on this journey, level up the boardroom, the diversity and inclusion. Artificial intelligence, this technology levels people up. Eventually, even robotics down the line, being disabled, it won't mean anything. So this is a game changer for business and societies at large. And I looked at this and thought, this wave is one that you have to paddle into. But I think that a lot of the technology, a lot of the companies you see founded today, I think they're all going to be disintermediated. I think eventually you'll be able to talk to, an application. It's got a large language model underneath it. It'll be multimodal. You can show it things, talk to it, text to video, any which way you like, just like a human. Even smell will happen, taste. And you'll be able to tell it to go and do things for you.
Yes.
And it will make that happen. You won't need to go and buy 7 different applications that are a thin layer of software above these models. The model will be able to go and do it for you, or an agent above it.
So when you're engaging with companies, what does it look like when you guys start your iterative process? Obviously, let's go with the 5-person, probably the same process, but ends up in a different place. But go for the boutique versus the big, and how somebody would engage with you guys, or what they should be thinking about in AI space.
Well, it's been very interesting because, as you correctly spotted, often the process is quite similar. So the first thing we do really is go in, we call a boardroom update, call it what we want, training essentially. So it's really level everybody up. So whether it's the founder or whether it's a board of directors, some have never heard of it. Some know what you're talking about. Some have heard about it on the news that we're all going to die. Someone's got their kid is now, using this software to write essays and poems, if you understand. Everyone needs to be leveled up. So the first thing we do is what we call a board update and training. And we explain, right, this is what the technology, where it came from. So you've had, 50 years of, of research. You probably had 10 to 15 years, maybe a large enterprise trying to productize this, something machine learning, computer vision. And now you've had these chatbot front ends, and now the consumer's got it. So it hasn't arrived in the last 6 months. It's taken, 50 years. But what's happened in the last 6 months is that there's now a way of engaging with this technology, so these large language models, which means that you can use it almost, there are so many different use cases for it. So we explain to everybody what it is, where it's going, how it's going to impact their sector. Depends what you're doing, the difference, especially if you're knowledge workers. And then it's how it impact their business, how they should be using it. We start with policy and governance. So even if you're a small company, how do you use it? How should you be using it? Who should be using it? Who should not be using it? You can be your business. You can be a very small, regulated business. So where's your customer data? You need policies. So we do that. And then we go into a phase, if they're happy with that, then we go into a phase of discovery and solutions. What are the quick wins? What are the big wins? What's the ROI? How can you implement this business? And we start to take people on a journey. And then we have sort of like sprints, for 3 months. We're like probably 30, 60, 90, 180, up to sort of 12 months out, about we're going to go on a journey with you. And some of it's going to be off the shelf, SaaS. Some's going to be solutions that we've kind of built that allow you to use the technology, but we try and keep them very lightweight. There's no point having a massive statement of work, deploying some software, because it's going to be relevant in about 6 months. Then you've got Microsoft Copilot coming out, Microsoft 365.
Yep.
So soon everyone's going to be faced with a prompt, whether you're in PowerPoint, even Excel actually, which is quite interesting, or Word. So then what happens then? So a bit of training. And then the idea then is this technology moves very, very quickly. So we become your sort of AI officer as a service. And we're actually offering fractional AI officers to go into businesses and offer that strategic support. And hopefully we build a long-term relationship, because the interesting thing about AI and this technology is that we're used to human evolution. DNA takes millennia, knowledge takes generations. This stuff's going to iterate overnight. I mean, all the time. So the idea of these large innovation curves we're used to, where something, it takes off, it grows, it's used, and it becomes defunct because new technology comes in and you get this kind of curve. You don't have those big curves anymore. It's going to be constant iteration all the time. So you might wake up and nuclear fusion is almost solved, and then by lunchtime, they've found a way of actually building it. So the world could change on a daily, weekly basis. It all sounds quite sci-fi, and we don't quite know when this is going to happen, but I am absolutely confident that it is going to happen. And the last thing I say is, and what we say to our clients is that this ship is leaving the harbour, right? And and Alok, my co-founder, calls it the bullet train leaving the station. And it's accelerating away at greater speed. I like the ship analogy because you can picture yourself trying to jump onto the ship from the quayside.
Yes.
Once that gap is large enough that you can't make the leap, you will never make the leap. You'll be stuck on the quayside. And that can be in business, that could be a competitive advantage. I think as you look further out, this is like decades, that's going to be a lot of society. So you think about that.
Yep.
Artificial intelligence is exponential. So we're used to a linear world, we're all used to this. It's going to grow by 5, 10%. If these things start becoming, we're like a train, we kind of get into an elevator in terms of that growth. And we don't get it. We hear a child cough, someone's got a cough in Wuhan, suddenly your kids can't go to school. That's a geometric progression. So we don't get exponential change. But once it happens, it's nigh impossible to catch up with it. And that's why nation states are obsessed with it.
So here's one for you. A thinking challenge. So if you had AI in any one of the businesses that didn't make it up until now, which one would it have probably saved the best?
Say that again, which?
So any of your businesses that haven't made it, so anybody that you cut bait on, if you had AI in any one of those businesses, which one might have been saved? That wasn't a people thing, maybe.
Most of the businesses that I'm involved in, they don't really work out because the product market fit wasn't there, or you run out of cash because the market's not there to supply it. So I don't think reducing your marketing content cost by 30% would have saved many of them.
Yeah.
But what it may have done though is given you more runway, which means that because you've got more margin, essentially more cash, which means that you've got more time to fix the issue, do your testing, or raise the finance. I think the more recent ones, there's one quite a lot, not too long ago, which was in the food delivery. I was an investor in food delivery, and anyone that could suddenly, it was in like macro balanced food, and suddenly anyone that could boil an egg and went to the gym launched one of these businesses. It got really confusing. Yes. I think that what we could have done with artificial intelligence, because we had the data, a lot of it's about data, because it'd been going for like 3 or 4 years. It wasn't a new business, but we kind of rebooted it. And the data we had about what worked, what didn't, what people liked, what they chose, we could have used to make it much more personalized. And that's what AI allows you to do, become very, very personalized, even down to personalized videos.
That's cool. So last bit here, as we kind of go into it, I call it like the red button moment, is if we're at the end of the show and somebody's only listened to the end and we're going to get them to rewind all the way to the beginning, what is Piers's top tip for business?
Automate the mundane.
That's good.
I was thinking about my head then, but I think that leverage technology to the nth degree to empower you, to give you superpower, to reduce your costs, maximize your growth, and then the worst case scenario as well, just to give you more time to go and do the things that you often don't get to do when you're building a business.
I think, but I heard it in Cortona last year, is use the automation so you can be more human.
Absolutely. So, perfect. Love it.
I thought it was great. Piers, thank you so much for coming on the Grow, Sell, and Retire podcast. Where can we find out more about you and more about what you're doing?
So you focus on implementai.io, or just Google me or go to my website, pierslinney.com. You can always find me, or on LinkedIn as well. And if you're interested in artificial intelligence in your business, then just reach out.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes. Thank you so much, Piers, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Grow, Sell, and Retire. For more information, tools, or to book one of our team members to work with your team, business, or to speak at your event or conference, visit rockfind.co.uk. If you like the podcast, you'll love one of BD's 3 books: The Assisted Purchase, True Gravity, and the book the podcast is based on, Grow, Sell, and Retire. If you want to work for the rest of your life, that is your business. If you don't, that is ours.